Very warm welcome to you all that's following us here on today's Conscia Tech webinar, where we will be covering a central management architecture of a multi-cloud. This will be based on the Intersight platform, where we'll also be talking about the Kubernetes and Terraform as part of that. Please connect the audio so you're following what we're saying, so to speak. You will obviously be default muted and the camera off. We will record this webinar, so you will be able to follow it afterwards. And also, please ask us questions in the Q&A section during the presentation, and we'll try to answer them as interactively as we can. And also, if not, then we'll try to assemble at the end, so to speak, or maybe reach out to you afterwards. So let's get started, Joachim.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about central management of your multi-cloud with Cisco Intersight. And who am I? I am Joachim Buchanan. I'm a CCIE in data center. I'm a senior data center consultant here at Conscia in Sweden. And Richard, you've already heard. He's our
I'm Richard. I'm managing the pre-sales also here in Sweden, also CCIE, networking, routing, switching. So we're very pleased to have you here this afternoon, about an hour. So thanks for listening to us.
Yes.
And just briefly talking about what are we talking about here? We're talking about Intersight as a platform, right? It's part of an FSO. And what is the FSO? FSO is actually a generic sort of term trying to describe a full stack observability. What is it? It's a concept. It's an architecture. It's a way of working with IT, working with tools, working with monitoring, working with visibility. The focus here is really in relation to past technologies where it was element focused, there were silos. I mean, now it's all focused on the complete technology stack to better reflect on today's IT landscape. And also suddenly we have the user in focus. The user experience is key. And really for FSO to shine, that it requires a collaboration here between different platforms. We have the infrastructure like networking, storage, services, the cloud, you name it. You have communications, you have services, you have applications. So the FSO is a concept of working with this whole stack. And yeah, please click Joachim again here. And really, I mean, this is sort of from a Cisco perspective. We're talking about these parts of the process where visibility is the first thing we will aim for here. Visibility, that means visibility in the full stack. This consists of different applications here that are all part of the Cisco FSO suite. Also gaining a little bit deeper into the insights of the full stack. How is it performing? How are applications doing? How are users observing this platform? How's the users, things like that. And then also taking it much further into the actionable part where we actually can start to act based on this information. So click again, Joachim, just to highlight that, and again, please. So we talked about before, for example, about Cisco Cloud and Ice, also webinars on that. Today we will be focused on the Intersight part, so that will be the key focus of today's webinar. So please get started, Joachim, on Intersight.
Yes. The agenda for today is we're going to talk about Intersight, where it comes from, the basic, how's it built up, and what services are available. And then we're going to talk about, at the end, we're going to talk about two specific services that you can buy via Cisco. And that's the one first one is the Intersight service for HashiCorp Terraform, where you can provision things in the cloud or in your on-prem and stuff like that. And then we're going to talk about Intersight Kubernetes services, which is a Kubernetes manager. So we will dive in right into the Cisco Intersight part of it. Cisco Intersight, where does it come from? From the beginning, Cisco Intersight wasn't available. There we had multiple tools where we could do different things. We had one tool for operations. We have another tool for automation or orchestration. We have a third tool for managing our multi-sites, where we were in the cloud or in the on-prem, and so on and so on. What the Cisco's done with Intersight is that they've merged all these tools into one. You have a single interface and a single API, because you have an open API you can utilize and provision things into site via Terraform, Ansible, or Jenkins, or whatever you want to use to provision things. You don't have to work in the GUI, but you have a very graphical overview of your things that you've included in Intersight. And we have 4 main focus areas that Cisco started with. And the first one is monitoring. You can monitor what's on your server. How's the server living? How's the server feel? Is it good? Do you have any problems with hardware? Do you have any memory issues and stuff like that? Then we have deployment. We can deploy things from Cisco Intersight. We can do it in multi-sites. We can do it in on-prem. We can do it in the cloud, and we can upgrade drivers and firmware to our servers directly from Intersight. We don't need to log on directly to the server. We can do it from the cloud. And we can also install things through orchestration. We can build things like that with an orchestration tool. Compliance. We can actually check compliance if we have the correct firmware, we have the correct drivers for the version of software, the version of operating system that we're running on top of our server and stuff like that. We can get notifications if we have any P-certs, any software deferrals and field notices. We can get that to us in the same GUI. We don't have to have multiple GUIs for that. And then we have the telemetry. We have the Open Cisco Connected TAC, which I think is a really cool end user case, because often Cisco Intersight actually figures out there's an issue in your hardware before you even figure out there's an issue in your hardware. I have a couple of examples when we did some upgrades and Intersight found out that we had an issue with some DIMM slots, memory cards in a server. And before we even figured out we had an issue with that DIMM slot, the DIMM was already on the plane going towards the customer and for being replaced and stuff like that. And there's always also an analytics-driven recommendation engine. It collects data. It doesn't collect user data on what's running on your server, but it collects data on what version of OS are you running and which version of drivers do you have, and then it can give you recommendations on what you should do because we're having issues. You're seeing slowness in the networking on the server and stuff like that. You can actually get that recommended for you. You should upgrade to this version and stuff like that. How's the architecture built? The main Cisco Intersight is a SaaS application. It's in the cloud. And there's the portal. You have everything. You have the open TAC. You have the contract status. You have the HCL, hardware compatibility list. And you have the advisories. And you have your servers in your on-prem, because here Cisco started. Was just for your servers. And then you have built into the software of the board management controller of the server a device connector, so you can claim that server into Intersight. Meaning from that point of view, you claimed it into Intersight, you can start manage it. You can install operating system and stuff like that. You can upgrade firmware and stuff like that. And even if you have the fabric interconnected systems, meaning you have the UCS blade chassis, you have a device connector in the fabric interconnects, depending on which version of software you're running. And in the HyperFlex, you actually have 2 device connectors. You have one in the board BMC of all the servers, and then you have a device connector in the controller of the whole HX cluster. So you can get all that up into Cisco Intersight. But there are customers who don't want to have all their data in the cloud. That's why Cisco actually came out with a connected appliance. And even further on, the next slide will show you we have an air-gapped appliance. But this means you have a small virtual machine that you installed in your data center, and that acts like a proxy for your connection up to Intersight. This small appliance is connected up to the main Intersight, meaning when there's an update in the main Intersight, the source Intersight, that will become available in the connected appliance a little bit later via an update that you can go in and trigger, or you can actually schedule the update that as soon as there's an update available, pull it down. And the device connector in your local site will be local. It won't go out over the cloud. Intersight, you still have the possibility to do open case and stuff like that, and Intersight can figure out if you have problems with your DIMM slots or your disks and stuff like that, and you have the HCL and you can get the advisories and stuff like that. But then we're talking about the private appliance, meaning you have for a defense customer or something like that, they don't want to have anything on the cloud. Then you have, it's the same appliance that you install on your on-prem data center, but this doesn't have the connection up to the source Intersight, the main Intersight, meaning any updates you will have to manage by hand. You will have to download the upgrades and install them by hand. But the device connectors are still local, meaning you won't send any data up to the TAC. You still can do open cases. You can do HCL intelligence locally, but it's not that. It will take some time before after Cisco does the updates on the main Intersight until there's an update and the HCL will be included. The new HCL database will be included in the update, but you won't get advisories the same way you get with when you're connected to the main Intersight. But that's what you learn to live with. And you even have, because we're talking about only Cisco equipment right now. You can only connect Cisco equipment right now. But then we have an Intersight Assist appliance. It's the same OVA that you use to install the connected or the private appliance, but you just choose it is an assistant to Intersight. Via that, it's connected to the main Intersight. Via that, you can claim and manage VMware, Pure Storage, Hitachi, and loads of other third-party hardware. And you can even use, if you have a generic HTTP tool, a hardware that does just generic HTTP, you can manage that via this Intersight Assist. And it acts like a proxy between the third-party hardware and Intersight. And where we go? Where are we now? Where are we going with Cisco Intersight? Right now we have the basic of Cisco Intersight, the management, the monitoring, and stuff like that with our server hardware. And we can have our infrastructure in our edge, the branch, data center, in the colo, or even in the public cloud. And we can do all these things. We can have bare metal, we can have virtual machines, we can have containers, and we can even have serverless that we can manage from Cisco Intersight. And how we can do that, I'm going to show you in just a couple of seconds. And we can all do these things. We can have our governance and security. We can have our support via the connected TAC. We can always have our service management, because we will see when our service agreements are out of date or when they're about to run out and stuff like that. And we can even have our DevOps tools. We can run via Terraform, Jenkins, or whatever to do things in Intersight. And we can have our apps anywhere. We can have them in our data center, which is traditional. We can have them in both on-prem and cloud. That's what's called hybrid. And then we can have cloud-native applications that we can manage and do things like that. But the cool thing is, Cisco has started to develop services on top of the base ACI. And the first one is Intersight Kubernetes services. It's a basic Kubernetes manager. It will help you spin up a Kubernetes cluster and maintain that Kubernetes cluster. I will show you a little bit about that later on in the presentation. Then we have Intersight virtualization service, meaning we can handle virtual machines and stuff like that in Intersight on top of VMware or even on top of other hypervisors. I will show you just, yeah. We have the Intersight workload engine. The workload is, Intersight workload is, they moved Cisco Workload Optimizer from on-prem into the cloud. It's basically the same thing. It will give you an overview of how your servers, your hardware is feeling, your applications is feeling. And that Intersight workload engine is part of the FSO full stack. Then we have a really cool service that I'm going to talk about next is Intersight service for HashiCorp Terraform. Meaning you can have HashiCorp Terraform cloud and you can actually provision things in your internal data center, in your on-prem data center, without opening up the firewall to be able to receive data into your management network. It will do that. It will allow you to actually do this from Terraform Cloud into your on-prem data center, which is probably behind a firewall. We will use the Intersight Assist for that. And the Intersight Assist will manage some tools for you, but I will show you that. Then we have the Cloud Orchestrator, which is an orchestrator where you can build cool workflows and stuff like that and do things in everything that you can manage from Intersight, even VMware, Pure, Hitachi, and stuff like that. And then we have, I mixed up workload engine and a workload optimizer. Intersight workload optimizer is the same as C1. Intersight workload engine is actually not quite fully a replacement of VMware's vSphere or ESXi. It's an hypervisor, but right now you can't do everything that you can do in VMware, vSphere, or ESXi. You can do quite a lot of things. You can run IWE on top of your HyperFlex cluster, and then you can run your IKS cluster on top of that. You don't need to have VMware if you're going to run only Kubernetes on top of your HyperFlex cluster. And yeah, right now I'm going to shift a little bit and I'm going to start focusing on HashiCorp Terraform service. And we have our applications, we have our services on top of Intersight, and I'm going to focus on this one. Terraform, what is Terraform? Terraform is an infrastructure as code IAC tool developed by HashiCorp. Terraform was in the beginning only for provisioning things in the public cloud as AWS, Azure, Google, etc. But nowadays it's also in the on-prem. Today we have around 2,000 providers. The providers are the things that transform your Terraform config into appropriate API calls that you can use. For example, there's a provider for Cisco ACI, so you can use Terraform to provision things in ACI. There's a provider to do things in Cisco Intersight, and I will show you this just in a few seconds here. Right now, here's the providers that Cisco has provided. Cisco DevNet is part of Cisco, and they are actually responsible for developing, and if you find issues with the providers, you report that to Cisco DevNet. So you see ACI, Intersight, MSO, which is nowadays called MDO, which is the multi-site orchestrator, DCNM, Cisco ASA as firewalls. You have the Firepower Management Center. You have Tetration, SD1, and iOS XE. iOS XE is quite new, so I haven't tested done that one out yet. But I've tested ACI, Intersight, and a little bit in MSO. Then we have providers from VMware. That's quite a lot of them. And here you see that one of the first ones that were developed by HashiCorp was actually VMware vSphere when they moved on from the cloud, when they started doing things in their own in the on-prem data center or colo data center. And you also have a couple of providers from Microsoft. So you can do things. There's, as I said, over 2,000 providers right now. How do we use Terraform? Terraform utilizes its own language called HashiCorp configuration language. That's what you use in the configuration files. It's very close to JSON or YAML. It's very close to that. It's basically interchangeable, but not fully. And Terraform is fully stateful and idempotent. That's a really cool thing. That's why I started using Terraform. Meaning Terraform will keep track of what changes you have done. So if you do multiple runs of Terraform without changing the configuration files, Terraform won't do anything in your infrastructure that you want to provision things in. It will always keep a state, meaning it knows what's been changed. If you do configuration in Terraform and you do a Terraform apply, as it's called when you build things, and then somebody goes into the GUI and removes that, if you run Terraform again without changing the configuration files, Terraform will reinstate that change that's been removed. That's the stateful and idempotent part of Terraform. It will always strive to know what's going on in your infrastructure. And why do we use Terraform? Why do I use Terraform? It delivers a consequent IAC experience, infrastructure as a code experience, for on-prem, private, or public cloud. Meaning you have the same language in the configuration files for both on-prem and the public cloud. You don't have to learn how to do things in AWS and Azure and stuff like that. You can just concentrate on doing things in Terraform. It bridges the gaps between DevOps and IT Ops. It almost becomes the only tool net DevOps needs. It codifies your application infrastructure, meaning you write code. You don't have to care about GUIs and stuff like that. You just need to care about the code you write. It's almost like the same as Ansible, but Ansible uses another language, but that's cool. And it creates a reproducible infrastructure, meaning if you take your configuration files to what you've used to configure site A, you can move that over and configure site B, and you will have exactly the same configuration in both sites. Or if you have a catastrophic event, meaning you will lose your on-prem data center, as long as you have your configuration files saved in a safe space, you can always reproduce that in a new data center or in a new infrastructure. And if we talk about the IST service, if you're running just Terraform Cloud, if you do it in the public cloud, there's no issue with opening up from one cloud to another to actually provisioning things in the cloud. But if we're talking about provisioning things in the on-prem, that means that you might need to open from the Terraform Cloud application that's run in the cloud into your management network and even maybe into your DMZ to be able to allow Terraform to provision things to manage that infrastructure. You can remedy that a little bit by running a Terraform Cloud agent in either your DMZ or inside your data center. And the sad thing is, it's very complex because you need to maintain this Terraform Cloud agent by yourself. You need to update it, and you need to remove it when it's old and stuff like that. And you get very limited. But the cool thing is that you don't need to open anything in the firewall when you do this, because the cloud agent will talk to Terraform Cloud. So you only will open to outgoing traffic. But if you go a step further and you buy this service from Cisco via Intersight, then we will have your Intersight Assist. And Intersight Assist will actually spin up the Terraform Cloud agents for you automatically. And you don't have to take care of when it's old and you need to life cycle it. it will do that for you automatically. And it's integrated, and the cool thing is the communication, I didn't say that earlier, but the communication from all things that talks to the Intersight, the SaaS Intersight, is always over SSL. It's encrypted. So there will be no one who can, there'll probably be someone, but most people can't just start to listen to the traffic that you send up to Intersight or back. And it's always initiated from inside your data center out, not from the cloud in. That is the cool thing. And if you want to run the Kubernetes service, IKS, you must have this Intersight Assist up and running, because we're going to do things in the VMware if we run it on VMware. And now I'm going to show you a little bit about Terraform. This is Terraform Cloud, and I've done a run. It's a couple of months ago, a year ago, I did this run, meaning I built some things in an ACI simulator that I have in our lab via the Intersight Assist. And when you do a run, you always do a plan stage first, meaning ACI Terraform will do it will load in the configuration files, it will load in the state files, and then it will start to compare what's changed. Then it will start to talk to your ACI fabric, in this case, or your infrastructure, in this case, an ACI fabric. And it will see what has changed from the state file. Is there any changes done in the infrastructure that's included in the state file or in the infrastructure? And then it will start to compare what's in the config files, and it will give you a result. This will change. These changes will be performed, meaning it will show you, I will build an ACI EPG, and it says the plus sign says it's going to build that one. And it will say that for everything that's going to be built, it's going to be, and even it will show you if it's going to be destroyed, if it's going removed, or if there's only going to be some small changes. I think I have something at the bottom here of this. It's quite a lot of I started building here, and there you go. Here are some changes that actually been performed. These outputs are all written to the state file, so I can use them later on for next runs, so I can actually reference them. And these are changes, meaning they have the yellow tilde in front of them. They will be changed. And then you can, in Terraform, you can actually, if you do things in the cloud, you can actually set up what it costs. So you can actually have a stop here, say, no, that's going to be too expensive. You're not allowed to spend that much money. And you can even go a step further. After this cost estimation step, you can set up what's called Terraform Sentinels, meaning they will keep track of what you name the objects that you're going to build in the infrastructure, meaning you can set up a rule set that will not allow certain things to be named, to be built, if they are outside of your naming structure. But if you don't have those, and I don't have them here because no cost, because I've done this in my on-prem, then you do the apply job, and the same thing. You will get what's being built. It will say these things have been built, these things have been built, and then you can log on to your infrastructure and check it out and see what's been done. And the cool thing is, if we go here to states, we can actually look into the state file and see what's included in it. And that's the cool thing with Terraform Cloud, because that will take care of the state file saving for you. If you don't run Terraform Cloud, you will manually do this by hand. You will have to configure Terraform, if you run it on your local computer, to actually save the state file on some S3 bucket and FS share or whatever. Because if you run Terraform on your local computer, then the guy next door or the guy at the next desk don't have access to that state file. You need to share that state file. And if you run Terraform Cloud, it will always be available, this state file, meaning you will always be able to do the backup and get back to a very working state. And we see what has changed. There's been something removed and there's been things added and stuff like that. So yeah, we always do get cool things when we do this in Terraform. Okay, so any questions about Terraform or IST so far?
I think, Joachim, we received that question in the chat there. I asked just briefly, but the question was, is it possible to deploy sort of cloud platform as a service workloads using Intersight, like, you know, things like creating an S3 bucket or an Azure SQL database, i.e. using it as more of a cloud orchestration tool? And my answer was
right
that it's...
now.
No.
Yeah, not right now, but they are working on it. When I'm talking about IKS, I'm going to show you that IKS will be able to run in the cloud later on, meaning you can manage your Kubernetes cluster in the public cloud. For the other things, I'm not sure, but we can check that up with Cisco, because I know that most of you are interested in running not just VMware. You have Azure in your on-prem data center and stuff like that. But for now, right now, we can't do that that I know of. But we will. I can check that up for you. Okay, then we will go on to the last part. I will slow down a little bit because I'm actually too early. Intersight Kubernetes. I see that the title is wrong in the slide. Intersight Kubernetes service. And this service is quite new. It came out as a general availability in February or March, I think, of this year. And I've helped one customer to actually run this. They moved on from the on-prem Kubernetes cluster. I don't remember what it's called right now. There's another Kubernetes cluster that Cisco has released. It released that a couple of years ago. But this is the replacement for it. What Cisco says you can do with this, you can operationalize your production-grade Kubernetes cluster with a turnkey flexible platform. Meaning it's native Kubernetes. It's 100% upstream. There are a couple of releases below the latest release because Cisco needs to verify that it works as they expect and stuff like that. But they're not that far behind. And it's production grade because it's hardened, secure, and robust. It's validated by Cisco, and you have container interfaces where you can run your own CNI and stuff like that, but it's included. You have the networking, you have the storage, you have the load balancing included in this cluster if you want to. The networking and storage is not optional, but the load balancing you can actually skip out of if you want to. And you have curated add-ons, meaning Cisco have a couple of add-ons that you can add on to for logging, monitoring, registry, and service mesh. You can add in the service mesh if you want to have the standard one that Cisco can deploy, or you can use another one if you want to. The registry, you can have the one built in, or you can use another one. The monitoring and stuff, you don't have to have these add-ons. The add-ons are optional. And it simplifies your Kubernetes day 0 to day n operations anyway, meaning you can have multiple Kubernetes clusters running via Intersight, or they managed via Intersight, and you can have them up and running really fast. And you have multiple options, hypervisors, storage, and bare metal and stuff like that. And it reduces risk and cost with a security hardened, highly available platform, meaning for now it can run on it can run on VMware. It can run on VMware on your standard servers. You don't have to have Cisco servers, that is standard VMware. Or it can run on IWE, Intersight Workload Engine, on Hyperflex. And later on, it will be able to, you can deploy IKS on all these tools. Not the public cloud yet. It's on the roadmap. I think it's not very far away. Meaning you can run it on bare metal, you can run it on multi hypervisor, you can run it on VMware, IWE for now. I think they're talking about expanding that. And you can run it on all Cisco hardware if you want to, or you can run it on HP or Dell if you want to, as long as you have a standard VMware on top. You can build your private Kubernetes cloud in a few clicks. Now I'm going to show you exactly how many clicks it is. You will start with your server hardware. You can manage your server firmware and the fabric, meaning the network of the hardware. And you can actually install, upgrade, and expand the cluster, but you can also install, upgrade the hypervisor directly from Intersight if you want to. Both ESXi and IWE. And later on, you can do it in the public cloud as well. And then you can spin up your clusters from Intersight. You can create it, you can start it, you can stop it, you can move the virtual machines, because we're talking about Kubernetes clusters in virtual machines on top of the hypervisor. We can't run Kubernetes clusters on bare metal yet, because both me and Cisco don't see the use for it, because you can only have 110 worker nodes on even in a separate cluster. So it can be very limiting if you're running on bare metal. That's why Cisco has chosen to run it in a hypervisor. You can spin up how many clusters you want, as long as you don't run out of memory or disk. And then you can manage the cluster from Cisco Intersight, meaning you can download the kubeconfig file and start managing it via the way you can do. And then you can also start to upgrade, and you can spin up, you can add more worker nodes, and you can add more master nodes if you want on the run and stuff like that. And you can also, you can do everything you need to do from the IKS. And then the cool thing is, because Intersight has an open API, which is very, very well documented, you can do this from Terraform Cloud, or you can do it from Terraform CLI, which is what you run on your local computer. You don't have to care about the GUI. You can do it from your IAC tool. Now I'm going to show you a bit about IKS. And you just need to bear with me, because I need to log on to Cisco Intersight first. I'm going to show you this in the GUI. I'm not going to show you this in Terraform. I'm going to do it here. And as you can see, you can have multiple accounts where you can do things. I had multiple customers there I can help with. So if they call me, and I can log on to Intersight and choose the right account, and then I can start doing things with their servers if I need to. When we do a Kubernetes cluster, we build a profile. It's very much based on the UCS manager way of doing things. And we can always go in, and I have undeployed changes here because we have some issues with our licenses. They ran out last week, and we're working on getting new licenses. So I can't deploy this, but I can show you how it's done. We can go in and check it out. We can check out the cluster, and we can see how any changes I do here now will actually be automatically added to the profile, meaning I will need to deploy the changes I can do. There are some things you can't do. But first of all, you need to set a name for the cluster, and I've named it Tech Webinar IKS Cluster. Then we go into the cluster configuration. I now need to specify an IP pool. From this IP pool, we will have the public load balancer grab an IP. And this IP pool are from our lab in Sweden, our private IP addresses, and I've specified what's the gateway, net mask, and from which range of IP addresses will the load balancer grab an IP. And then I need to set up a user so that we can SSH into that to the Kubernetes cluster. And I will need to specify an SSH public key, and it needs to be in the ECDSA format. Then you just specify this here, and then you will add DNS and NTP, because those are very important when you do things. And then you will add the private networks that you will use inside the cluster. Keep in mind, these networks can't overlap between multiple clusters. I tried, it doesn't work. It won't allow you. But these service SIDs, there are internal load balancers and services that you can run between the pods in the Kubernetes clusters. And then you can add your own registries if you want to. If you don't want to use public, you can run in your own root CA certificates and stuff like the registries and stuff like that. And then you can set up, if you have a proxy, and if you need to talk outside of your data center, you need to talk out to the internet and stuff like that, you can set up your proxies. I haven't done that because we don't need any proxies in our data center, or in our lab, sorry. Then we come to the control plane. Here we specify how many control nodes, master nodes, do I want to have. We can choose between 1 and 3, because that's 2 doesn't make any sense, because you need to have consensus between the master nodes when you have a cluster. So that's 1 or 3. And then you can specify the max and min size that's used for when you expand the cluster, when you do an upgrade. If you want to upgrade from one version of Kubernetes to the next, then you can spin up a new control node, and then you will allow that into the cluster, and then you will take down one of the old ones. So you can spin that up and down if you want to do. And then we have the version of Kubernetes. Right now, I've chosen this one to be 1.21.10. I'm going to show you where we specify this. I can do that later on, but then I will specify the same IP pool I specified for the load balancers. I will need to specify that for all the worker nodes, meaning it's the same network and it's the same range, because all the control nodes, master nodes, need to have a public IP so they can talk to each other with outside of the node if we have multiple hosts that we're running it on. And then we can set up labels and stuff like that. And then we will set up the virtual machine, the infrastructure configuration. Meaning which networks are we going to use? Which storage are we going to use when we spin up the virtual machines? And which ESXi cluster I'm going to use, because this is running on an ESXi cluster. And yeah, I can also specify which resource pool and stuff like that if I want to, but I haven't. And then we will set up how are the virtual machines going to be configured? How many vCPUs? How much memory? How much disk are they going to be provisioned with? And this is just for the control nodes, as I said. The next step is we will come to the worker nodes. How many worker nodes are we going to have? First of all, we need to specify the name. And the name always start with, this is the prefix of the name, and it will add a running number after that. So if you spin up 5, it will be worker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the same thing as I did with master nodes, I can specify the desired state, meaning how many worker nodes do I want to have up and running? Meaning if there's a virtual machine dying, Intersight will actually make sure that, you only have 4 up and running. It will make sure that you get your 5th machine up and running automatically. You don't have to do that manually. And as the same with min and max size, if you spin up and spin down, and if you upgrade, it will actually allow you to expand and do that. Well, you will need to specify the Kubernetes version, and it's the same policy as for the master nodes, and it's the VM instance and the IP pool are the same as for the master nodes. And then you can set up labels. Then the next to last screen when you spin this up is if you want to add any add-ons. And I prepared a couple of add-ons that we can add. We have the Kubernetes dashboard that can be spun up automatically. We have the service mesh, and we have the monitoring tool that we can do. I don't want to do that right now, so I won't do that. But now we've added everything that we need to be able to spin up a Kubernetes cluster. So we come to a summary screen. This is what you want to do. This is the cloud provider. It's on the ESXi. It's in this cluster, and it's and we can see what's the configuration. We will have one load balancer and stuff like that. And we will have this SSH user, and we will see how many master nodes we have, and how many worker nodes we have, and stuff like that, and which add-ons. And then all I do is click on deploy down to the right. And then when I click on deploy, Intersight will start to actually deploy the Kubernetes cluster for you. It will download a template which includes the operating system and all the Kubernetes tools that you need in the virtual machines. First of all, you download that template, and then it will start to clone that template into running machines. I don't have a running cluster right now because of the license issue, but otherwise I would show you this. But I will show you the different pools and policies. We have the kube node, the IP pool for the Kubernetes cluster is what I showed you earlier. This is exactly the same that I showed you earlier. It's just a pool that you include. And then we have loads of policies. And we have the add-ons at the bottom. That's policies. And then I specify in the policy, I specify which add-on I want to have, and a couple of rebooting and install strategies, and if it's going to be updated and stuff like that. And you will do that for everything. And you don't have to specify these policies by hand when you do it, because you can always do it from within the profiles. If I start to create a new cluster, I will just do a test, and I can create a new pool here by clicking create new instead of choosing an existing one. So I don't have to go into pools and policies if I forgot to do that beforehand. Close. Yes, we will go back to. Yes, any questions about IKS, Intersight Kubernetes Services?
We actually received a question here. Is there a way to utilize IKS in a brownfield environment, or do we need to redeploy our current Kubernetes clusters to get the IKS features? So the question is essentially, can we import a current cluster, or is it always a redeploy of clusters through IKS?
It's always a new deployment. You can't import an existing cluster today, but you can, if you spin up a new cluster, you can always move the pods and the workloads running on the worker nodes to between clusters if you want to. But it's always a new cluster. I will move that. Any more questions? We have time. We have 11 minutes left.
I don't see any more questions in the chat. Let me see. Is there another one? No, I think we have no more questions in the chat. So
Cool.
If not, then you can always start summarize a little bit, and also maybe send people on their way on how they could sort of what would be a logical step of addressing.
Yes. To summarize what we've done today, I've talked about Intersight, where Intersight comes from. I've talked about Intersight services for HashiCorp Terraform that we can utilize to codify or have our infrastructure being as code. I've talked about Intersight Kubernetes services, where we can manage, deploy, and monitor our Kubernetes clusters right now on the VMware or IWE hypervisor. It's coming to the public cloud. And to be able to start utilizing this, you can start out by reaching out to your sales guys, and I can help demo this deeper if you want to, once I have the licenses up and running in the Intersight again. And I can say that I have one customer that's actually running this in production. Oh, no, sorry, they're running it in development right now, meaning they have developers. We've spun up the development cluster for them, and they have developers developing containers and things that they for their customers, so they can just ship the containers just to their customers. And that's running really well right now for them, and they are moving on to doing that for production as well. So they will have production clusters up and running quite soon, or if they haven't done that already. I haven't talked to them in a couple of weeks now, so probably they have moved on to do that. And yeah, you can always start reading in. I didn't show you that, but when you're if you have an account in Intersight, that the only thing you need to start an account in Intersight to begin with, you need a Cisco Online account, a Cisco account, so you can log on to their webpage. As soon as you have that, you can log on to Intersight and start claiming devices. Later on, you can add on Azure AD, you can add on LDAP and stuff like that, so you can utilize your local logon. But the first logon always has to be via a CCO account. But when you're in, if you have any questions about what I'm doing, I need to read them up a little bit more. Up in the right corner, you have a question mark in the circle. If you click that, you can go to Help Center. And if you do that, you will get to the help page of Intersight. Here are the total help and all you can do in Intersight. For example, you can go in and look at Intersight Kubernetes guidance, and here's what you need to do. And if you start to look at, first of all, they start to talk about you need to deploy. No, here we go. We need to deploy the Intersight Assist. They will show you, they will give you a link to the web page where it shows you how to deploy the Intersight Assist. If you already have it up and running, you can skip that step. But the next step is we can go in to start deploying our Kubernetes cluster, and they explain everything that you need to do. And even for example, for the SSH key, the SSH public key, they show you how to generate that SSH key in the correct format. So you can just copy that onto your local computer, generate the SSH key. So this help page is really cool. Now I'm going to stop talking, actually. That's what I'm going to talk about.
So Joachim, do you see any reason for a customer not to use Intersight? I mean, if they have a UCS or compatible infrastructure, I mean, it's clearly the way to go.
Oh yeah. If you just want to have that simple thing as connected TAC, because if we're talking about, you can even connect your ACI fabric to Intersight to be able to. So if you open a TAC case in your ACI fabric, the TAC engineer will see that based on the serial number that ACI fabric is connected to Intersight, so you don't have to download the tech config files, what's it called?
Log files,
the tech support files, sorry.
Yeah.
You don't have to download it to your computer and then upload it to the case, because the TAC engineer can go into their internal tool called Borg, I think, and he can just click on a button saying, I want to have the tech support files for that ACI fabric. And that will be generated down as a command down to ACI fabric, and the tech support files will be collected, and it will be uploaded via Intersight. So you don't have to care about that anymore. And the same thing for UCS, if you have servers or Hyperflex, the monitoring and the management and the help in creating cases is invaluable, I think, because you don't have to care about the tech support files there as well. And quite often I've found that Intersight finds the errors earlier than we can actually do. So yeah, no stopping. You should be using Intersight if you have Cisco UCS. And you can't do everything without a cost. There are a free tier, that's the base tier, but from up on there it's starting to cost money. But depending on which license you have different things you can do. But if you just reach out to your sales guy, they can help you, guide you in that, and they can help you, show you how what you need. But for the basics, it's free of charge. It's included in when you bought your Cisco hardware.
Great, Jocke. Thanks. Maybe we should be, so kind to give everyone a couple of minutes back at the end now, and also really thank you a lot for listening and hanging in with us today. And please reach out to us if you want to get into contact with us. You're very much welcome to contact us directly if you like to.
Yes.
So thank you everyone.
You have our email addresses on the screen, and you will get you can download the presentation from our webpage later on, and you can also download the video if you want to share it with your colleagues and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Have a great afternoon.